Welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday night, rainy Monday night here in southern Maine. Hope everybody's having a wonderful start to your week. Um, Very apropos, we are getting ready tonight to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Um, Happy that I'm doing this tonight and not, let's say last night or 2 nights ago. Yeah, a little bit of news, I think, coming out of Montreal today that um, we will talk about. So I'm just happy I don't have to re-record from last night, right? It just would have been silly. So before, of course, we dive into my take on the Montreal Canadiens this year, we do have a trade to talk, and a fairly significant one, perhaps, with Patrick Laine heading from Columbus up to Montreal, along with a 2026 second round draft pick and defenseman Jordan Harris. Haverhill, Mass native, Jordan Harris, so fairly local here to us. Um, Interesting trade. Line has 2 years left on his deal at 8.7 million per. We know that last year was a bit of a throwaway for him. He had the injuries. He was in the player assistance program. But the prior 2 years, he had 56 points and 52 points, respectively. Still probably not numbers that blow you away at 8.7 million, but kind of it is what it is. For Jordan Harris, he has 1 year on his contract at 1.4 million. Did play 56 games last year for Montreal. Had a 3.11 and 14 line. Did average 17.28, 17 minutes 28 seconds per game, I should say. And did feel like he was kind of part of that young defensive nucleus they had going. For Montreal, you do get the second round draft pick. You add to that treasure trove of high draft picks that you have. And with only 2 years left on Lane's contract, I think the risk is somewhat limited. If he doesn't fit in with this core, he could be gone, before the team's really ready to make that next step up. But if the change of scenery works for Line, we all know he has 40 goal potential. He's had 40 in his career. Yes, we know 2018 was quite some time ago, but I think the potential is still very much there for him. He's still only 26. I forget about that. Yeah, it just feels like he's been around the league forever, but he's still only 26 years old. On the other side of this deal for Montreal, you never like to lose, good young defensemen. They're really valuable in this league. But Montreal does have other young defensive players, plenty of draft picks to develop, other young defensemen down the road. So I do feel again this is a low risk, high reward type of move for Montreal. The only thing I really worry about is does Liney's presence take ice time or development time away from other young forwards? It's something we were kind of talking about with Boston. If we had traded for Jacob Chikrin, was that going to rob Mason Lohrei from some valuable ice time? Similar kind of thread is where I'm going with that. We'll see. I just do think the risk reward here is favorable for the Canadiens. To add a 30 to 40 goal guy in your room on August 19th is not really a bad thing, in my opinion. Yeah, on the Columbus side, you're completely turning the page on the whole Pierre-Luc Dubois, Patrick Laine chapter of your franchise, right? None of it really went well for you guys. Uh, just none of it worked, right? So you get the cap relief, which is, now puts you at, according to Puckpedia, 18.2 million under the cap. So plenty of cap space for Don Waddell to work with here over the next year or two. And you do get a solid young defenseman to add to the room. You do give up a second round pick. You never like to do that, especially when you're Columbus. Potentially being another, uh, kind of high up in that second round type of pick. But that was probably the price you had to pay to move that sort of a contract out the door. So really, guys, big picture, I do like this trade for both clubs. I mean, I think depending on how this goes, Lana could be a huge fan favorite, or he could potentially be a major lightning rod, as he has been before for a Canadian fans. So it's gonna be fun to watch. Curious to see how this all works out. So, anyways, we will move on now to actually talking about the team on a whole and get into what I feel their 24-25 season is going to look like. Starting with head coach Martin St. Louis, of course, had an amazing career all those years in Tampa Bay. Loved watching him play. Even as a Bruins fan, I could really appreciate his game. Smaller guy and um, really just went over 1,000 points his career. Just a heck of a player. But so far, he's got 201 games behind the bench, 75, 126 record for 438 percentage. I like the hire when they brought him in. I believe he's the right fit and certainly the right mentality for this club as they build this thing with all the young talent they have. I think his demeanor, I think his patience on the bench, mixed in with a little bit of fire, right? Every coach has a little bit of that fire. It's just the right blend to move the team along organically, which I think is what you're trying to do. When you're a team like Montreal in their position. Salary cap, this is a number I had to update tonight. Suddenly they are minus 2.02 million over the cap after this Patrick Laine deal. So a little bit of work there to do, but I'm sure they can move, enough contracts around to get under the cap. Kind of have to, right before the start of the season. They still have some time for that. Um, Looking at first round draft picks this year, they did draft Ivan Demidov, right winger, and Michael Haig, center, both going to them. So a couple more young players. And when you look over the next 3 seasons, when you add in the second round pick from tonight's trade, they have 4 first rounders, 5 second rounders, 5 third rounders. Yes, so they've got plenty of capital, whether they draft all those players or hey, in another year from now, maybe they start to get close to that playoff line. Maybe they start trading some of those picks, to add those veteran pieces. Going to be curious to see, but they've got a lot of really, you know, decent assets there to work with going forward. Last year's results we know weren't great. 30, 36, and 16. Again, that 16 number we'll talk about a little bit later, but 76 points, eighth in the Atlantic Division. Of course, missed the playoffs again. I will say of the four eighth place teams, they were the best of the fourth, eighth place teams. I don't think we give trophies away for that, but obviously they've been part of this really tough Atlantic Division, and um, probably would have been a sixth or seventh place team in other divisions. So I guess you take whatever little bit of good you can, right? Um, Diving into some of their team stats, goals for they were 26th in the league at 2.83, goals against 27th at 3.43. Now, what's interesting, and this was a reminder to me, and anybody looking at stats online, you've got to be careful because one site could have one number, another site could have another number. Looking just simply at their goals for, goals against for the year in terms of like a plus minus, I checked four different sites. Two of them, NHL.com and MoneyPuck.com, both had them at minus 49. ESPN and TSN had them at 53. I don't know. I'm not sure how we could get something like that, different from, four different pretty reputable websites. But so anyway, it wasn't great. Whether it's minus 29, minus 53, wasn't great. Power play, 17.5% on the season. That was good for 27th. Their PK, not much better at 76.5%, good for 24th. Oddly enough, their faceoff circle, they weren't bad. They were 10th in the league at a 51.5%. They do have a couple of good, nice centers up there. Block shots, they were fifth, 1,605. Now, you say, hey, great, they were fifth. Well, they were in their own end a lot. So that number is definitely going to add up and needs to be taken with a grain of salt. On hits, they were 20th at 1805 as well. Of course, skaters, these are all names any hockey fan's going to recognize. But Cole Caulfield played 82 games for the team, had 28 goals, 37 assists for 65 points. Nick Suzuki, also 82 games played, 33 goals, 44 assists for 77 points. Their first round overall draft pick from a couple years ago, Slavkovsky, played 82 games, had a 20, 30, and 50 line for himself. So really his best year. And I think he's just one of these emerging stars. It's taken a couple years. I know everybody up there was a little worried after they took him and passed on Shane Wright, but I think this big kid's going to work out just fine for them. And then lastly, defenseman Mike Matheson played 82 games, had 11 goals, 51 assists for 62 points. So good there. We get to goaltending. Obviously, Jake Allen has moved on. down to New Jersey, got traded down there. So they are left with Sam Montembeault, who played 41 games, had a 16, 15, and 9 record, 3.14 goals against, and a 903 save percentage. Caden Primo played 23 games in net for them, had an 8, 9, and 4 record, 2.99 goals against, and a 910 save percentage. Uh, Curious, we'll talk a little bit more about goaltending later on. Um, no, up until tonight, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about um, as far as key additions, but we changed that. We do, of course, add Patrick Laine, as we know, has the 2 years left at 8.7 per season. And earlier this summer, they added Alex Bar Bolay forward. Going out the door, defenseman Jonathan Kovacevic, and of course tonight, defenseman Jordan Harris. So not a ton of movement, um, and really not a lot that happened July 1st for the team. They were pretty quiet, and I was okay with that, to be honest. The team, they've been taking more of this organic approach in their player development, not rushing, and in my opinion, building the roster the right way from the ground up into the draft. And before tonight, of course, I had all these other wonderful, logical thoughts around building organically, building from the draft, and then the Patrick Laine trade happens. So it's like, all right, we're going to crumple that up and throw, throw some of those quotes away and thoughts away. But as I did state earlier, though, Patrick Laine is still only 26 years old. There's still a ton of talent, I think, in his game. Just as a hockey fan, you hope that he's gotten past the worst hurdles and can find his game again. I talked about that with Ace from Running with the Devils podcast when it came to Jack Hughes. Just as a hockey fan, you hope that these guys hit their potential because you just want to see greatness. You want to see these great players play great, regardless of what team you cheer for. At least that's my perspective. And Liney has a lot of game. It'd be great to see it fulfilled at some point here in his career more consistently. Um, but yeah, if you pair him up with the likes of Suzuki and Caulfield, now suddenly you have a few different players that can put the puck in the net. Still not the deepest forward group, we get that. But I do think for today, Line makes them a potentially better and more dangerous team than they were yesterday. Despite losing Harris on the defensive side, I do think they have a good developing core of defensemen. I use the term developing, and yes, that word could be maybe a backhanded way of saying the defense isn't good enough yet or not quite there yet. But I do think they're heading in the right direction. With the likes of Caden Goulet, Justin Barron, Lade Hudson, Logan Malinu, they spent a lot of quality draft capital on a position long term. And my guess is it's going to pay off uh, here as we go over the next couple of seasons. Going back to goaltending, I am a little bit curious about goaltending. Allen's gone, of course. It opens up plenty of ice time for Montembeault and Primo, which may be a good thing, maybe not so good of a thing. We'll see. Um, they're going to be playing in front of this young defensive core, and they have other guys like we mentioned, um, Matheson. Of course, they have Jack Guy and some others who are there who have been there for a little bit, but um, you do kind of worry about this. This goaltending with that defense in front. I don't have huge expectations for the group this year, but again, guys, every year goaltending is one of the hardest things to predict every single season. We've seen major swings, so one of these guys catches lightning in a bottle this year. We'll see. We'll see. Could be though a long term position that Montreal needs to address. Um, we go back to last season and you look at all the losses. The Canadiens, though, still played a very hard style of hockey. In my opinion, not your typical eighth place doormat of a team. We saw them a lot here in Boston. And, of course, anytime Boston Montreal plays, regardless of standings, like they're going to come out and play. You kind of expect that. But as you watch them in other games throughout the season, they played hard. You know, they had 27 losses by one goal. I didn't do the math on every team on that, but that's got to be a pretty high number in the league. That's a lot of one goal losses. And of course, they led the league, tied the league with overtime losses. I think with the Islanders at 60, and of course, Boston was right behind them with 50. So, a lot, a lot of one goal losses. You take those 16 overtimes, you give them 6 of those is wins. That's just another, now you're over 80 points, for the season. So it just shows you they played hard. They didn't quite know how to win all those games. And that's really what St. Louis, that's his job now is okay, he's taught them how to play hard. Now he has to teach them how to play hard and win some of those tight games, win some of those one goal games down the stretch. I think for this season, guys, a successful season will be just improving that win total, continuing that organic growth and development from your young players. You've got a ton of draft capital. And I do think you already have some of the right players in place uh, for your team. Now I think it just needs some time, needs some more development, and yes, maybe a goaltender down the road. So I think another year out of the playoffs, in my opinion, for this group, they will be hanging out with Gollum. Sorry, Canadian fans. Hope you like fish. Gollum's going to take you down to the caves, and you guys will be eating fish. But I don't think you'll be there for long. I really don't. I think you guys are on on the upper trajectory, and I just personally hope that this is a situation where Martin St. Louis hangs around long enough to experience some of the successes because you see this so many times in the league. You get a coach like him who comes and develops a team, then gets fired, then someone else steps in, and when the team is more ready to win. So I hope St. Louis can hang out and make some of those playoff runs for the Canadiens. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening tonight. Hope everybody has a wonderful evening. If you do like what you're hearing, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Definitely appreciate that support. And until next time, be kind, show love, and God bless.